Hey YouTube, Awesome Rider here. Welcome to my review for the S.H.Figuarts renewal version for Gokai Red from Kaizoku Sentai Gokaiger. If you did not know, Sentai Figuarts are back. As of this moment, they're only focusing on Reds in 6th, and thus far they mostly have just been giving us new characters from series like Zenkaiger and Dawn Brothers. Recently King Oger's Red went up for pre-order, but this was our first renewal one, where they went back and redid an old figure that got a previous release, as they tend to do with Rider a lot. They'll probably do that with some other ones, but again, as of right now, they're focusing on Reds in 6th, so we're going to be taking a look at this to see how it compares to the original, and whether it's worth picking up. This review is quite late because I actually wasn't able to get my hands on a pre-order, and everywhere it was available after that was like redonkulously expensive, but thankfully I was able to find one on Amazon for a decent price, because like I do like Figuarts, but I don't think they're really worth the price a lot of the time anymore, but especially like an aftermarket over-the-top price. But let's talk accessories first, as we usually do. As you can see on him, you have his two signature weapons, the Gokai Saber and then the Gokai Blaster, which are overall well detailed. Honestly, that's pretty par for the course for Figuarts. You know, I haven't really ever had a Figuart where I felt that the painted accessories were like underdeveloped or anything like that. They're always really well done. I'm just keeping this in here because there's some stuff that might fall out. But yeah, as you can see, you get a plethora of different hands, all kinds of different personality posed hands, hands for holding the various accessories, closed fists, you know, all that type of stuff. And then right here you have two versions of the Mobiarts. See, those just fell out already. You got the open and closed one, which all again are very well detailed, and even on the back you have some decent details. Like, you don't have the letters on there on the blue screen, but that's not a huge detail. This doesn't fold or anything, so you don't have the closed Mobiart. I don't know if that's a huge deal to anyone. And as you can see from what fell out, you do get three versions of the Ranger key. You get just an open, like, key mode one. You have right here this one that's just like a key. I meant Ranger mode, and then a key mode one there. And then you have this one here, which aren't like as well detailed, but they don't really need to be. I think it's a nice inclusion, especially if you want to pose it like that, but there are definitely parts that if they didn't include it, I wouldn't be upset because you're prone to lose them quite often. But let's talk about the figure itself. I mean, overall, it is a good-looking figure. Well-painted, well-detailed. I know I actually heard about some people having some QC problems with this in terms of paint and stuff, which that does happen once in a while with Figuarts, not as much, but that is interesting of note, especially since I would consider it to be more annoying with this, since it's triple the price of Lightning Collection, which is something I'll be delving into here shortly. But overall, good-looking, and the proportions and everything is much better balanced than the original, which we'll be taking a look at in a minute, and I'll, kind of go over the articulation a little bit in a second as well, but I will note, no loose joint problems or anything like that. Overall feels solid. Don't know if anyone else has had loose joint problems with this one, but mine, is your standard, well-done Figuarts articulation. You get your ball joint, double knee joint, swiveling, ball joint at the foot, the chest and waist articulation, ball joint at the arms, swiveling, double elbow joint, gun falls out of your hand, ball and head neck articulation, so very well articulated, no loose joint problems. Overall feels solid. It definitely feels a little bit more solid than some of my older Sentai Figuarts that don't really hold up as well and feel more brittle. It still doesn't feel like the best, like it doesn't feel of the highest quality, like this is a premium figure I'm holding, and it doesn't feel necessarily as solid as some Rider figures just because of the nature of them being more armored and stuff, but it does feel more solid than the originals. However, I do have some nitpicks about the design. One of them here is the shoulders. He has really weird shoulder flap joints that I think just look immensely awkward, and a lot of the other ones don't have that. And even the older one, which I'll pull in for comparison here in a second, doesn't have the greatest ones, and you still have that gap in the shoulder, but these just look really awkward to me. I don't know, what's going on with that. And also, this is honestly, in a way, kind of a nitpick, but the helmet is kind of off for me too a little bit. It is more accurate proportionately than the original, and yet still feels a little bit off. It doesn't feel like it's quite right. Again, it's not a huge deal. And also, the gold trim is a little bit thicker than in the show. That sounds like such a pathetic complaint, and this is the type of stuff that annoys me that people complain about the Lightning Collection. But it is a bit off, and I feel that there is a bit of a different standard when it comes to stuff like this compared to the Lightning Collection, which is like a third of the price compared to this. And again, like if this, just setting aside the price, this type of stuff doesn't bother me. It doesn't need to be perfect. Like, this is close enough. Just setting aside the price, putting it out of my mind. This is a cool figure, sits on the shelf, it's awesome. I notice that stuff, but it's not going to end my world. However, it is something that I will be more annoyed by when I'm spending Figuarts money, versus if this was a Lightning Collection figure with slightly off proportions and visor, that's honestly, who cares? And that's the type of stuff people will judge Lightning figures as if they are Figuarts. So it does bother me more on a higher end figure, and I think people need to calibrate their, complaints about this. But let's talk about some comparisons. So here we have a comparison to the original Figuart release, who's a little bit kind of awkwardly posed because honestly he's very loose jointed, he has a hard time standing, but you can see it's an absolute improvement. I mean, I think there are some of the older Sentai Figuarts that do hold up, but I think a lot of the time they're really romanticized. I mean, yes, they're still well painted and detailed, and they have a lot of well done accessories, but a lot of them just don't hold up, especially for the price. I guess I would argue that his gold paint lining thickness is about the same, more accurate, but the gold obviously just looks a lot more prominent, a lot more shiny. The head sculpt is a lot more accurate. This is one of those ones I was talking about where it falls victim to being, a little bit skinny, like way too skinny for the helmet, and it just looks like squished, and they're like all run through a skinny filter. So even though this one isn't perfect, it's a vast improvement, not to mention just the overall feel is better. But I think that, again, you do have that weird shoulder gap here with this, but it's not as bad as this. That is one sort of, downgrade to it, but yeah, it's definitely an upgrade. So if you are, looking for a Figuart, I don't know what these go for, to be honest, right now in the aftermarket. I don't know if there was a change after this released, but, even though I have problems with this, if you are dead set on getting a Gokai Red Figuart, this is definitely improvement despite some of my problems. I did want to do one other comparison, though, just talking about how off this one looks. As sort of, one you can sort of compare it to is, Kaizoku here, which I think looks a lot more accurate. And I did notice that a lot of the figures we've gotten have like armor pieces on the shoulders, so you don't notice the shoulder stuff as much, but he doesn't seem to have those awkward shoulders like this guy. And in general, like this guy is just an example, but for him, Zenkaiser Black, Don Momotaro, looking at them on my shelf, they all look great like this. Like this is as close to accurate as they're gonna get. He looks almost like I shrunk Kaizoku down and put him on my shelf, whereas this certainly isn't a bad figure by any stretch of the imagination, but it just doesn't give me that same feel. It's definitely improvement over the original, and like I said, I have those nitpicks about it, but just looking at it on the shelf, while it looks good, for me personally, it doesn't look like as good as Kaizoku as the others, where it feels like, wow, that's like 95% accurate to the show. That's amazing. And again, if it wasn't for the price, that's something that usually doesn't bother me. I honestly don't need perfection. I've had years of Power Rangers and Sentai figures on my shelf that aren't exactly accurate or even close to it, and it's honestly fine with me. But when you're paying the price, you do kind of want a little bit something more. And for me, it is a little bit disappointing because I've actually legitimately been enjoying Sentai Figuarts being back. They've all been really good pieces that, while sometimes are a little bit too pricey for my taste, have been overall really good display pieces that look good, like Kaizoku here. And for me, Gokai Red just isn't up to the standard of them. I really hope that they, up the game if they do any other updates or other, older figures that we haven't done before but that aren't new ones. Just in general, this is for me the weakest one so far, and I can't recommend it as highly as the others. If you're considering getting any of the new Sentai Figuarts, I would much more easily recommend one of the Zenkaiger or Don Brothers ones that have come out. And it's tough with this too, in regards to recommending it, because it depends on what you want for your collection. Because odds are it won't be anytime soon, if at all, we'll get updates for the rest of the team, because they're focusing on Reds and 6th right now, and if we do, there's a very good chance, probably at least a 90% chance, that they'll be exclusive. So that's something you want to consider about like why you want this. Like, do you just want a Marvelous figure? If you can find this for a good price, sure. But if you want the whole team, you might consider something else. Like maybe even the action hero figures from Power Rangers. They honestly weren't bad. But anyways, guys, that's about it for this one. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell. See you notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.